Renee Knight with Inside Unmanned Systems. I'm here with Brit Wanick of uAvioniX. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Renee.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know that these shows are busy, so we appreciate you
Yes,
sitting
they are.
down with us. I guess can you, so how many years have you been coming to the show, and what do you like about it?
So this is my second time to AUVSI. Prior to this, I was in business aviation, so very familiar with the space and but uAvioniX has been coming to the show for quite some time, right? Since they got started in this. We're a familiar face to many, and we've been growing along the way. A lot of our customers are here, a lot of our business partners. So for us, this is a great opportunity for the industry to get together, and it's moving really fast, which is nice to see. And things are starting to tick up a little bit as far as the conversations that we're having, the level and the quality of those, and it's pretty exciting. Very exciting this week, actually. So.
Very good. So can you tell us a bit about uAvioniX and what your solutions are?
Sure. So uAvioniX, as the name implies a little bit, oddly enough, it's actually micro avionics, but many didn't notice the mu at the beginning of that. But uAvionics, UAV fits really well with AUVSI.
Sure.
But effectively, we make very small, lightweight, low-power equipment for aviation, and that includes both general aviation, so crewed aircraft, if you will, as well as the unmanned aircraft that we find here at AUVSI. We also operate in defense, and now we're moving into aviation data as a service as well, right? Because we have a great understanding of ADS-B. We produce those products in the general aviation space as well as in the UAS space, and our understanding of that allows us to essentially collect data from aircraft that is driven by ADS-B, and then use that for things like detect and avoid, as well as support for airports via the FAA and the like. So we've been essentially across that space for quite some time. As we say, we're connecting everything that flies and radically innovating for safe and open skies. Not to be a bit of a poet there, but it all comes together pretty well. And this crowd in particular, we deliver quite a bit for, and are continuing to move forward with our aviation data services for detect and avoid and an assured command and control.
So what are some of the things people that are visiting your booth are most asking you about, or what are some of the common questions that you're getting, or concerns even?
Yeah, no, there's a wide range, certainly a wide range. So I touched on two of them there. One is assured command and control, right? So we provide both ground stations, airborne radios, and an infrastructure essentially through a cloud-based system called Skyline that gives you assured command and control. So essentially you can use things like our multi-link to be able to talk to different paths and different frequency connections consistently and optimally as you fly beyond visual line of sight. So what does that really mean? Well, it means at certain points in the flight I may be using ISM band radios to communicate. In certain other points I may shift over to LTE, and then later on I might go to SATCOM. Really depends on what the optimal signal is. The net result for the operator is I never lose communication with the aircraft from a command and control perspective. So there's been a lot of discussion around that. We had a little announcement at the beginning of the week as well that supported it. The second piece is, well, now I'm flying and I have an obligation to maintain safety in the skies. So how do I do that? Well, I need to be able to detect and avoid other aircraft. So that's the DAA portion of things. And we make a variety of services and products that are there to support detect and avoid. Back in October, we acquired Iris Automation, and Iris Automation provides Cassia. Cassia is both a ground-based as well as an airborne-based optical sensor that allows you to detect aircraft and avoid them, right? So they don't run into one another.
It's important.
As I mentioned earlier, we also do ADS-B, and so we understand how to receive that signal. That is essentially an electronic conspicuity measure that allows us to see where aircraft are, what altitude they're at, what their course is, etc., and then take appropriate means through our autopilots to be able to avoid the collision that might occur otherwise and stay out of the way of the piloted aircraft, if you will. So both those conversations are happening, and occasionally they all come together, and it's like, all right, I need both those, and that's where our systems like Skyline and Flightline that are offered as a service essentially for a particular volume of air that y'all want to fly in become really important. And we allow then an operator like a drone delivery company or somebody doing agricultural spraying or the like to focus on what they do best, which is deliver their product to their customer, while we focus on the ability to deliver those services. So that's what most of the conversations have been around. Lots of stuff there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of as the industry evolves and the technology evolves, how do you see your technology evolving moving forward? How do you see things going in the next coming years?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, a little tangential to all this. I mentioned we support airports, and one of the things we're doing there recently is we're starting to support what's called the Surface Awareness Initiative. And what that means is we're deploying essentially a set of ADS-B surveillance networks for airports in the U.S. that aren't typically serviced by a surveillance umbrella like AUVSI. And the reason we're doing that for them is to help prevent runway incursions and collisions between crewed aircraft, essentially. Commercial aircraft that are landing on the runway and another one's taking off, and you've heard some of that in the news lately. So there's a big push there. The good news is that as we deploy these sensors and set this up for the FAA, it also means that we're capturing that data for UAS operators to be able to understand what the environment and the airspace looks like in oftentimes very dense urban populated areas where these major airports like Austin, Indianapolis, Tampa exist, right? So in 18 months, 24 months from now, that data and that activity will be constantly monitored and then made available to these UAS operators.
Oh, wow.
So as you fast forward a few years down the road and here you are getting your drone delivery of Starbucks in the morning, that company that's doing that will be able to do that with knowledge that there's a service there that's supporting them with that DAA. They won't have to build it themselves, and it'll be at an infrastructure level that they can consume. So that works out at scale economically for both the drone delivery company, it works out at scale for us, it works out for the cities to be able to have this infrastructure in place. So there's a nice trajectory there between what we're doing kind of as a starter for the FAA with their Surface Awareness Initiative that comes all the way around to really supporting an integrated airspace in a couple years from now. So that's a pretty exciting trajectory to be on at the moment.
Yeah, that is. That's great.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So for anyone who's watching this or visiting you guys this week at the show, what's the main takeaways? What are the main things you'd want them to know?
I think there's been a great set of conversations around creating that integrated airspace from an electronic conspicuity or operational conspicuity, or pick a phrase and add conspicuity, right? The idea of I want to be seen and be seen. So I like the momentum that's happening there, and there's some solid discussions of really collaboration in how we can do that safely to be able to allow these aircraft to enter and fly in the airspace. So that's one thing that I would take away from this. And then the second is that the operational capability of our technology is beyond the hobbyist, right? Mm-hmm. It's really moving into the enterprise level, and the companies that we're seeing here and those that are going into the market now are approaching it from an enterprise perspective with a business plan, with a marketing plan. Like, it's no longer just the hobbyist that I want to fly and go up and down the golf course with. Sure. And so what's great about that is these companies are looking at how they can actually improve the things that we do in society and make functional use of unmanned aircraft systems in a way that will benefit us in the future. That's a great way to then enter into future discussions about regulation, and it's more than just a group of people trying to get things done. It's actually commercial, industry, government coming together to say, how do we make things better in the future? And that's what feels good about the show. Yeah.
So can you talk a bit more about the collaboration piece and why that's so critical to kind of moving everything forward?
Well, people have been flying aircraft for a long time, and there's a great freedom of being able to get in your Cessna and take off and fly where you want to fly and go through the clouds and see the land and then come back and land again. And when you introduce an aircraft that is very difficult to see, may not necessarily be electronically or otherwise conspicuous, right? You do need to provide some way of deconflicting those two, right? So that the UAS, the small UAS in particular, doesn't collide with someone who's out for a Sunday flight, right? We need to preserve that freedom of access to the airspace as we move forward while still allowing both types of aircraft to fly. And so those of us that are pilots that are in that space need to look at the perspective of the unpiloted or remotely piloted aircraft and vice versa to say, how do we collaboratively work together to share the responsibility of safety, right? And we're now at a point where technically that's very, very possible, We're just figuring out the details of which kinds of compromise need to be made, what kind of equipment needs to be provided, what the cost of that equipment might be, how many people will adopt it, and then also address that there will always be the edge cases. So what do we want to do in those edge cases? And that discussion is happening very, very collaboratively at this point, which is nice to see.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great kind of feeling in the
Yes. We're making progress, right?
Yes,
And that's the
getting
good news.
there.
So, and it feels like there's some momentum and some desire around it, which is really great to see. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great chatting with you. We appreciate you stopping by
Yes.
and talking with us. And thanks for watching. And for more from the show, visit InsideUnmannedSystems.com.